Hi there, Tad Argrave from Marketing for Hippies, and today I want to talk about point of view marketing. Specifically, there was a question I got the other day about wondering what is the map, feeling a little confused on it. I don't blame her because it's the hardest thing to describe in what I talk about with point of view. So the very short recap, and I'll put a link to the video of the point of view pyramid below, but you have a point of view pyramid. At the tip of it, these are, in your point of view, this is what I call the route. These are the steps, the 5, 6, 7 steps to. This is your basic guidance of you would start with this, then this, then this, then this, the kind of formula that you have. And of course, formulas don't work all the time. It's general guidelines at best. It's sort of a best fighting chance in a generic way. Below that is what I would call your compass. So these would maybe be your top 10 principles, the guiding ideas. But then below that, 60% of this is the map. What the hell is that? Well, it's a map. So you know what a map is. This is not unfamiliar territory. You've seen a map. But speaking of unfamiliar territory, that's what a map does. Helps you navigate through unfamiliar territory. And when you see a map, a really good map, if you've ever been traveling in a city or something, you come to a big map of the city and there's that little orange dot saying you are here, yeah? So you see that dot and your immediate surroundings are immediately familiar, and there may be certain things on the map that you're aware of. Oh, and that's where the castle in Edinburgh is, and that's where Arthur's Seat is, right? And this is where the Royal Mile is, and this is where this is where all the bookstores are. So the map has some things you know, but if it's a good map, it doesn't just have the things you know. In fact, a lot of it are things you'd never thought about. Places you've never been, places you've never even considered going. So a map is going to have these two qualities. It's going to have what you know and what you don't know, what you're familiar with and what you're unfamiliar with. Same when they come to a workshop. So the way you can think about the map, or one way is you can say these are the elements involved in you having these symptoms or getting this result. These are the elements. So for example, if you're going to draw a map of having a good death, you're a death doula, well, things that they're going to be familiar with that would go on the map would be the deathbed, the person dying, the doctors, the nurses, the family, the heaven, the other side, depending on. But there might be a lot of other things, and people say, oh yeah, well those are things I would just draw on myself. If I were to say, draw a little map of someone's dying days, what would you put in it? What are all the elements involved in their dying days? You might put those, but maybe there'd be other things too. Your ancestors, death, him or herself. There could be the culture and its insanity around dying represented on the map. You see what I'm saying? There's a lot of things people might not think. And my guess is that's true for you too. When you start talking about this work you help people with, and that could be a journey from island A to island B, or it could be how you make a boat. There'd be certain things people hear say, oh yeah, I know that, I'm familiar with that, sure. But there'd be a ton you would say that they would say, I'd never thought about that. So when I do my day-long workshop, it's a whole day of point of view. I'm sort of mapping out marketing. Why does it feel so bad? How could it feel good? And I know there's a bunch that I say that is familiar to people, but I also know there are a number of things I say that people have literally never thought of before. It's a new element they've never considered. So when I say, what if the point of marketing was not to get the sale, but to go for the truth of if it's a fit? For a lot of people, that's a new thought. Not completely foreign, but they've never held it in that way, talking about marketing, talking about sales. They've never had it click like that. So this is what the map is. It's the constituent parts, the threads that are woven together in your work and in the treatment of their issue, in helping them get the result they want, or in making what you make. And so what is the map, though? The map is, and any map, is just a representation of a territory. The Korzybski quote, the map is not the territory. It just represents it pretty well. And of course, every map is going to include some things and leave some things out. By the nature of the maps are going to be a generalization. So how do you make a good map? Well, you've got to spend time on the territory. Yeah, you've got to really see the place itself. That could be seeing it through a story that you hear. Certainly, that's a way of mapping things. It could be seeing a photograph of it. But the best maps, I think, are going to come from you were there in person. And so, I've written a lot on the outside of marketing about shame and particularly shame for men, but I suppose I've heard it relates for women too. And why am I able to write about it? And people often say, wow, the way you write about it does something to me. But I'm just testifying. When I'm writing about it, I'm drawing a map because I've been there. I've wrestled with the shame, myself. I just did a video the other day about some of this because when I started marketing, I did all the terrible stuff I tell people not to do. I was that guy. And, haven't we all been that person, that we never thought we would be, doing things we never thought we would do, and, hurting people, and just, it's hard, so there's shame. And unless you've really been in it, you can talk about it theoretically. If I'm talking to a 21-year-old who's never really done something they really regret or feel ashamed about, and they talk about shame, what I'm saying? It's going to be intellectual. It's going to be abstract. It's going to be sound very good. It'll be a lot of love and light. It'll be quoting Brene Brown. It'll be, well, I read the National Geographic magazine. Well, have you been to that country? No, I've never been. But I read lots about it. There's that scene in Good Will Hunting such a good scene, where Robin Williams' character sits down with Matt Damon on the park bench and says, you know what I realized? He said, you could tell me the whole history of this building, but you've never been there. You could quote me all these poems about heartbreak, but you've never been heartbroken. This type of thing. I remember talking with a Hawaiian kahuna, and he said the shadow side, the negative polarity of knowledge is not ignorance, it's theory. It's the abstract. So the best maps come from our own personal experience, where you can say, no, I was there, so I know what it's like. I'm just testifying to how it is. There's an old Icelandic word. I was reading a book on shepherding in northern England, like you do. And there was a word heft, and I should do a whole video just on this word. But it's a word that means tradition. It also relates to weight, heaviness. And it's the word that they would use when they would take their sheep in the spring out onto the heather and into the hills and mountains. They call it hefting the sheep. And when they're first born, then the next year when they go back, they're already familiar with the territory because they've been hefted. So you have tradition, weight, familiarizing them with something, and then also etymologically connected is heath and heather, the land. So when we say somebody's words have heft, what we mean is they've spent time on the land. They are testifying. They're saying, I was there. This is how it is. This is what I saw. That's what a map is. You saying, this is what I've seen. There's so much more to say. Hopefully that gives a little bit. Feel free to ask any more questions. This is genuinely the trickiest thing I find to talk about with point of view. I hope that helps.